I see that the meeting is recording. Okay, it is now 6:30. Can you hear me okay? Okay,
Sorry, it's still showing us. We're good? Okay, we're good. Sorry, we're good.
Okay. So it's 6:30, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Wednesday, August 5th, 2026 Mendon Select Board meeting. This is a hybrid meeting. The chair, Mike Morali, is absent. I am the vice chair, Elena Brugos, and I will be running this meeting, barring any technology issues. The other three members of the board are present in the room. We have Brendan Chanel, Brian Morford, and Jason Cooter. Since I'm not in the room, I've asked that Brendan Chanel lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, and this meeting is being recorded.
Let's open the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. So we have a number of appointments on the agenda, but first we're going to start with any citizen statements and petitions. Are there any in the room? I do see, yes, I recognize. So please, step forward and say your name and address.
My name is Carl Hummel, 15 Misco Road. I wanted to speak on another emerging technology, digital surveillance. I saw on the agenda that they're going to be talking about AI policy. Given the recent Supreme Court decision earlier this summer about geofencing and cell phone tracking is considered a Fourth Amendment search for privacy considerations. Given the recent interest in Milford about flock camera use in their city, I think it would be helpful if Mendon worked with the police department and the select board to come up with a policy not just for flock camera, but any other kind of surveillance, like if we got Axion, which is one of their competitors. Constitutional law in this is still emerging. Using a flock camera to look at a license plate and then do an instantaneous lookup to see if the car has been stolen or is otherwise subject to a law enforcement effort is constitutionally no different from an officer sitting by a traffic light looking at a list. But things get much sketchier when you save information and then use it months later to conduct a search across a broad variety of things. There are other constitutional issues. If you take that data and a private company or the town were to sell it, if you are to get into a regional network, unless you are able to track what the network is doing. So I think it's important that we as a town look at the example of what happened in Milford and be proactive in that sense. And so I would look forward to your attention to that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Are there any other citizen statements and petitions, either online or in the room? I see no hands raised. So then let's move on to community events and announcements. I don't see any printed in the agenda. Jen, are there any upcoming that you are aware of?
Okay, none that I am aware of at this point. I do know early voting does start, and Ellen has the information posted on the front doors, and I'm sure it's on her page on the website.
Great, thank you. And I guess this is also a good opportunity to mention some recent community events. I want to make a shout out to the 350th working group working with the Mendon Cultural Council to do the amazing, 250th, the 250th celebration and the mock signing of the Declaration of Independence. It was a very successful event. Does anyone else want to speak to that who's in the room? I know several of us were there.
Joanne Lamont, 17 Crestview Drive.
Hey, Joanne.
Hello. I just want to thank you all. It was an amazing day. It really went well. It was a great outpouring from the town. It was great to see everybody get together as a town and the community. And I think from what I can tell from the feedback, everybody had a fantastic time and they really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping in the future we can do something maybe on an annual event like a Founders Day and celebrate the founding of Mendon in May. So, but I want to thank you all. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you, Joanne. I know you were one of the main movers and shakers. And I know it was a group activity, but I recognize that you really pushed this through. And I want to thank all of those who were involved in the huge amount of work for this event. I enjoyed it very much. I think it's great for our community also.
Out of the tavern. So that would be a very interesting place to continue to hold events.
That was the first time the tavern was ever open to the public.
Yeah, you couldn't tell because everybody was very enthusiastic.
Yeah,
about it.
and we did. It was such a joy to be able to do that and show it to the public. And we thank Jane Lowell immensely because without her allowing us to do that, it wouldn't have happened. But yeah, we'd like to do it again in the future and hopefully have other community events and show the pride in our history that we have in the town, because we do have a lot of history in this town that dates back to the 1700s. So it would be able to nice to show that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So then we have meeting minutes for approval. Did you all have a chance to read the July 1st minutes?
I move to approve the select board meeting minutes for July 1st, 2026.
Second.
Okay, discussion. All right, excellent meeting minutes again. Thank you, Kat, for those. And so since this is a hybrid meeting, all of our votes tonight will be roll call votes. So why don't we start with the order of we'll start with Brendan and then I'll go last. So all in favor?
Yep, Chanel, aye.
Morford, aye.
Cooter, aye.
Brugos, aye. All right, thank you. The minutes are approved. And then we had some meeting minutes for circulation from July 15th. So we don't need to vote on those now, but hopefully you've all seen those. Then next up, we have 6, which is appointments, and we have a lot of appointments. I want to point out that we are passing over 2 of them to be voted on at our August 19th meeting. So we're going to be skipping over 2 that are on the agenda, but the others I believe we are all voting on them. And just as a point of order, I'm wondering if we can do these as one big motion for all of them that have the same expiration date, so that we don't need to do 20 roll call votes. Jen, does that seem plausible to you as a point of order?
I believe so.
Yes, I believe we've done something similar before, so I think that we could do these all together as long as they have. So I think so we have a long list of appointments and they're in the printed agenda. And so I guess I want to open up for discussion if there are any specific ones that people want to discuss yes.
Oh, it looks like all but one have the same.
Yeah, so Jason
expiration date.
Bangma would have to be a separate motion, but then we can do the rest by essentially reading their name and committee appointment. And yeah.
Okay, great. All right. And then I think before we get into that, I guess, Jen, did you want to say anything about these appointments, or was there anyone that wanted to bring up some discussion points?
So I don't know enough about all of these appointments. I did attend the Concom meeting, so I am aware of those 2. And as for the others, I'm not.
So there would have been a split between the time that Jen took over and the time that Jeremy went on vacation, and he would have received emails from all of these committee chairs about the recommendations. So so all of these people have been recommended by their committees and were reviewed by their committees before they made it to the select board. So these are all the choices of the local committees as recommended to us. And so, if there isn't any one of these that anyone would like to talk about in block, we can just
approve them as one.
Yeah, thanks for that context, Jason. Yeah, so it is we always appreciate it when people are willing to be reappointed to the committees. It provides great continuity for the committees. We appreciate having new people step up as well, but we know that it's a lot of work being part of these committees, and we appreciate the commitment to the town. So that being said, if there are no other points to bring up, I would entertain a motion to appoint this list of people.
You want a motion or you want me?
Do we read the list?
I move to reappoint X to Y and X to Y and X to Y and
Yeah,
X to Y.
I can do that. All right, I move to reappoint Leo Winning to the Conservation Commission. And Carl Hummel to the Conservation Commission, as well as Phil Sepley to the Council on Aging, Carol Cotros to the Council on Aging, Earl Perlman to the Council of Aging, Joanne Lamont to the Cultural Council and General Bylaw Review Committee, Michael Krager to the Finance Committee, Ron Zamuda to the Finance Committee, Jesse Curl to the Capital Planning Committee and the Finance Committee, Tom Maroli to the General Bylaw Review Committee and Zoning Board of Appeals, Karen Mead to the Historic District Commission and Historical Commission.
Pass over her.
Yeah, passing over Kathy Schofield. Deb Bro to the Historic District Commission. Morris Smith to the Town Forest Commission. All with a term to expire on June 30th, 2029.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, roll call vote.
Yeah,
Morford, aye.
Hooter, aye.
Brugos, aye. All right, thank you again to all of you for stepping up again. And then we have one additional appointment that with a different expiration date. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Jason Bangma.
move to appoint Jason Bangma to the Town Forest Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2028.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, roll call vote.
Aye.
Morford, aye.
Hooter, aye.
Brugos, aye. All right, thank you for that.
Everybody.
All right, thank you all for stepping up once more. Okay, so next we have a donation to accept the acceptance of $500 from Tineo Consulting, Inc. for the Mendon Cultural Council mock signing event. Is there anyone here to speak to that? Or Jen, do you have information on that you can share?
Lonnie came in the other day with the donation and he was happy to donate to the event.
Okay, great. And do you know what I know the event had many different aspects to it. So this was a cash donation towards the event, or a monetary donation.
Monetary donation, yes.
Great, thank you. Okay.
I move to accept the donation of $500 from Tineo Consulting for the Mendon Cultural Council mock signing event.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, roll call vote, all in favor?
Morford, aye.
Hooter, aye.
Brugos, aye. All right, thank you. And thank you so much for that generous donation and contributing to helping that event be so successful. Okay. All right, next up we have number 8, responsible AI use policy. So a discussion of whether the town would adopt a responsible AI use policy. And thank you, Jason, for drafting an initial version of such a policy. Some context for this: there was a citizen statement at a previous meeting pointing out that some community members are unhappy with seeing AI being used in town, in public-facing materials for the town, and just bringing up the question of whether we have an AI policy. So Jen or Jason, do any of you in the room want to talk some more about this?
I'm going to defer to Jason only because my knowledge of AI is very limited.
I don't mind talking about it. So last year, both last year and the year before, we've had AI on the docket because we use not generative AI, but just standard sumarial AI for meeting minutes and notes that go to the select board. And so Teams, the service that we use to record and broadcast our meetings, does that work for us, and we pay for that license, and that license is handled by Microsoft. And so at that period of time, we came up with guidelines for internal use, but we never really particularly talked about policy. What I've put together here is an assemblance of a policy, as well as more of a guiding practices. And it's pretty extensive, but it draws from, of course, like Jeremy likes to say, like from other towns' work, policies that exist in other towns, but as well as MGL that exist around AI. And so I just sent this to the board today. That's why it's not in the meeting packet. But I think we should do this the same way we've done our other policies. Individual reviews, send the notes back to me individually. I'll integrate them when we get to the point where we can hand it off to the TA and legal for more municipal review. Then we'll bring it into the public sphere to display and hear feedback on. The bottom line on top for what I've put together here is about responsible use, not bans or direction, meaning that we would like you, for example, I remember when the speaker was here last time, they were saying, you could have at least asked local artists first, right? So I heard that loud and clear. And so one of the things I put in there was, it's a waterfall. You need to make a solid attempt to do real human art in these systems. If you can't, you need to actually make a real solid attempt to generate good art, as opposed to, just asking for the first thing that comes across, or Googling. Honestly, nowadays, it's really easy to do that. So, so I'm trying to bend it that way so there's less shalls and musts, and this really has to be malleable. Literally don't know what I'll be talking about in this landscape in 6 months. And I have that conversation pretty regularly at work. So, for things that are low risk, for things that are now being integrated into our lives, like, summaries of conversations, we see acceptable uses keeping that inside of our electronic systems that we pay for and license, and that have controls around them already, so that we're reusing that existing policy and sort of technical guardrails. But as it applies to how people do work, I think is the sort of larger discussion we need to have. And what is our reasoning, right? As opposed to just allowing emerging technology because it's emerging at such a rapid rate. What is our reasoning for allowing AI into our working systems? Meaning, are we expecting employees to be generating documents faster because now they have access to more AI systems? Should they be finding stuff faster? Is that something what you're looking for? Or should we get everybody out there and we're saying everything needs to be a human word? Or are we trying to go in between, right? So I think that's the where the human in the loop is for the government, I think is an important thing to pin down, at least for the next year.
Okay, yeah, thank you for getting the ball rolling on that. I think I imagine that we're going to have more discussions about this once we've had a chance to read through. I did read through at least parts of it, and I think it's. I appreciate that we're going in this direction. So did Brendan, were you going to say something also? Did I hear a voice?
I just wanted to say that the document that you sent over kind of touched on all my main areas of concern, mainly You talked about the local artists and supplanting, local talent, and, kind of homogenizing the end work product. The other thing that I want to talk more about is making sure that everything that is generated in AI, whether it be the prompt or the work product, is compliant with record retention requests. Because if those record retention policies don't align with MGL,
Right.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that the human should always be responsible at the end. AI sounds very confident all the time, even when it's wrong. So the person that is submitting the document is responsible for it.
Right.
Yeah, agreed.
Good point. Yeah, I also really want to make the point of transparency when, I think it would be useful to consider transparency about when AI is used. So just any sort of disclaimers about the amount. Just I think it's important for trust for people to know when it is being used. And I think this will, having this policy will help move us in that direction. So, Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, not right now.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. And I one other thought that I had is, since this is such a hot topic in terms of the broader community, at our goal meeting, we talked about ways of reaching the community and possibly having more ways in which we interact directly with the community. And I do wonder if this is a topic where there might be a town hall about it, because I do think people have very strong opinions about this. And I think it would be interesting to hear from more of the community about this. So that's my thought, if we want to open up that door.
I
So
agree.
we'll talk about that more, I'm sure.
And in the audience.
What's that? There's a hand in the audience? Yes. Thank you.
A waving
Go ahead.
hand.
Go ahead. Oh, look at that. Okay.
Carl Hummel, 15 Misco Road. It's probably to no surprise that I have strong opinions on IT matters. I've served with Jason on the IT task force. I would look forward to looking at whatever your document is, but I agree there needs to be a differentiation between internal use within municipal employees and committees that are work products that are used within operations that are not as subject to open meeting law and records retention, and official documents that are put out and are put on the website and made available. There's also, I think, a difference that should be made between visual artwork, which unfortunately has been tainted by the fact that the LLM AI companies engaged in theft. Likewise, they engaged, Anthropic just settled a big lawsuit where they admitted that they stole a whole lot of writers. So in particular, artwork and whether town committees and municipal employees put out artwork that's been generated by AI, that's going to be a much hotter topic. I don't know whether Jason didn't want to toot his horn or not, but in the past 6 months, the town did use AI to produce the Providence Street website. And what was the other website?
Mendon Budget website.
Right. And I had a conversation with Jason at the time about disclosing that it was an official town website that the town and was generated by LLM. And one of the things he told me at the time is, after his giant LLM framework went in and generated it, he went through every single page and clicked every single link, because AI has a tendency to hallucinate or make stuff up. And he needed to verify that that had not happened. That's another part of the accountability, that if an LLM is being used to generate text, that a human being has to eyeball every single line, because we're legally responsible for it. So that's my input. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, any other comments about this before we move on? Let me know if there are any more hands in the room. Okay. All right, then next up, item 9 is the ADA compliance plans, grievances and related documents. So, there are 2 items. And so, Jen, can you?
They're number 9.
So
What's that? We've got 9A and B, grievances procedure. So Jen, can you
Yeah,
speak to
Dylan would
this?
like to do the ADA compliance plan presentation first.
Oh, to do that first, certainly. Okay, please come up, Dylan, if you're in the room.
They're getting together right now.
I'll just
Okay.
mention that presentation, and then I have as well.
Okay.
Okay.
They're related, so they're under the same agenda.
All right.
Hello,
Hello.
I am Connor Robichaud. I'm the Director of Regional Services at the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. As part of my role there, I've tried to develop a simple process for towns to update their ADA plans or create them. We've done quite a few in Central Massachusetts. We go through a competitive procurement process to bring on our sub-consultants, who I'll introduce in just a moment. And then we were able to secure grant funding to completely pay for the development of the plan. It's the same grant program that you can then apply for capital improvement projects to actually chip away at the plan. So that's great. CMRPC's worked with Jim Mazik and your access advocates, Mike Kennedy, on dozens of these plans. They're going to walk you through some of the findings from the self-evaluation and from the transition plan. So I'll hand it over to Mike.
Intros first, and then we'll start.
Good evening, everybody from Mendon. My name is Mike Kennedy. I serve as the ADA Access Coordinator for Your Access Advocates, formerly known as Center for Living and Working, located in Worcester. I've been working there for 20 years now and have really been doing ADA and access related work such as this. And just happened to meet Mr. Mazik during one of the accessibility site visits that I was on, and the rest is history. So I just want to say, on behalf of Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, Your Access Advocates, and in partnership with Jim Mazik, thanks for trusting us to administer your ADA plan. I think we put together a really nice product for you. I think you're going to be very happy with it.
Great.
And that being said, I'll pass it over to Jim.
Okay, so my spiel, and Connor, I apologize. You've heard this probably 40 times, and Mike, you too. So again, I'm a planner by trade, 40 plus years as a certified professional planner in municipalities in Eastern and then in Western Mass. My last 32 years prior to retirement in 2020 with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, which is the counterpart to Central Mass Regional Planning, but that's in Hampden and Hampshire counties in Massachusetts. I was deputy director there and also oversaw our community development department. We did hundreds of millions of dollars of projects in Central and in Western Mass. Housing, infrastructure, public works, streets, sidewalks, water, sewer, social services, and barrier removal, such as, so I also, during that time period, did ADA plans in Eastern and in Central Mass to avoid any conflict of interest in Western Mass in my areas. I probably do one plan a year, and that's when I had met Mike on a project and also did Millbury's ADA plan in 2006, and Mike is the chairman of the Commission on Disability. He chairman then and still is. And then we started a partnership, Center for Living and Working Inc., and now Your Access Advocates Inc. Collectively, we've completed about 60 ADA plans or ADA and related plans. And just in the past 6 years, we've done over 40 ADA plans. We've done a lot just in your immediate surrounding area. Millbury, actually, we did Millbury again in 2025, so done Millbury twice. Grafton, Upton, Northbridge, Milford, Uxbridge, Oxford, Webster, and Dudley, and then again all over from there. But those are probably closest ones to Mendon. So the form, I'm going to go over a little bit about just some background.
Before you continue, can I just ask you to pull your papers off?
Is that blocking that?
Just the front two mics.
Can I push it up a little bit?
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna just do a little background. And then turn over to Mike's going to talk about the self-evaluation piece. I'm going to come back and just talk about the format of the plan and then go into actual facility assessments. It'll be a brief overview. It's not going to go every single building, but the commonalities found on the buildings, rec areas, schools, and then your sidewalks and curb ramps. And I have bullets. I typically try to talk fast through it so it doesn't take up a lot of time. So under Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA was signed into law back in July of 1990 by President George W. Bush. It is a civil rights law. It's intended to be equal access to all programs and services to all persons, and that civil rights be guaranteed to persons regardless of physical or mental impairment. There are 5 titles under the ADA. There are 2 titles that basically fall under your jurisdiction. Employment, so the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, which you've probably heard of. And then Title II is state and local government's accessibility. And under that, it requires that programs and services, including website access, which I think Dylan's going to talk about later on. And then that there to be also is under Title II, there's a requirement for the preparation of a self-evaluation and transition plan. And that essentially is kind of your capital plan to identify what needs to be done. The current standards for the 2010 ADA standards went into effect in March 2012. Massachusetts also has a code for accessibility. It falls under 521 CMR, a specialized section of the state building code, but it is not civil rights. It's only triggered by construction. So if work is done on a building and the work is less than 30% the value of the building and the work is under $100,000, then only the work that's being done must be accessible compliant. If it's under 30% and over $100,000, then the work that's being done, access to the building, bathrooms, or a bathroom, drinking fountain, and a couple other things as well, need to be accessible compliant. If the work is more than 30% the value of the building, the whole building must be brought into compliance. And it's a 3-year window. And it's also a look back. So when the work is being done, you would look at 2 years ago, last year, and this year, and that's to see if you trigger that 30% range. So when we do these plans, we look at both ADA and 521 CMR. Most folks only look at ADA, but you're bound by both. So we look at both, and we look at the higher standard of the two. So when I talk later on, you'll see when we have things written up, it's the higher standard of ADA or 520, which we are recommending that be done. And also under ADA, rather than strictly a structural component, there's also the ability to looking at altering a program or service or policy or procedure to address that area of non-compliance. So the plan content and the format, we basically have 4 areas of the plan. The first we would call it our front end, which is more of a reference guide. We call it your one-stop shopping center. I'll go back to that in a second. The self-evaluation piece, which is looking at policies, procedures, and Mike's going to talk about that in a few minutes. The transition plan, which is the facility assessments. Every individual facility has their own assessment. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the plan either online or.
Yeah, we received it last meeting. Yeah. It was either last meeting or the meeting before, but yeah, it was very detailed.
I wouldn't expect you to read it.
I think most of us went through.
Yeah, we through it.
Yeah.
And then when we go through this, there's a reason for some things. It's going to be easier for you to what you should focus on, what we'll go through that. And then the appendices, which is the survey form, which we distribute, and then sample documents and sample policy procedures, and then a list of funding sources. So on the front end piece, and we started doing this a few years back because we were getting a lot more questions from folks. So we said, well, let's put this information in the report so you can use as a reference guide. So we have a separate chapter in more detail on the ADA and the 5 titles. I didn't go through them all this presentation. We have another chapter on other federal accessibility regulations and what you are or not bound by. Another more detailed chapter on 521 CMR. We have a chapter on alterations to historic properties because there are exceptions and how you go and address that. We have a section on EV charging stations. I know you have a couple out here. There are no regulations on EV charging stations. I mentioned the reg of 2010 for ADA 16 years ago. 521 was probably what, early 2000s or so, the latest version.
2006.
Okay, so 20 years ago, I don't think EV charging stations existed back then, but there are regulations on reach range, on accessible routes, on heights, and on parking spaces. So we have that in there, and that's something to refer to in future you need to. We have another chapter on emergency preparedness for persons with disabilities. So the emergency management folks could look at that and incorporate that if they haven't already done so. We have another chapter on ADA service animals versus emotional support animals. That is often the case where someone comes in with their pet python or whatever, and they say that's my service animal. Well, no. It's only if it was a dog or a miniature horse, yeah. But if it was anything, nothing else counts. ADA compliant portable toilets. So we've seen hundreds and hundreds of accessible portable toilets, and not a single one has ever been ADA compliant. Typically, the grab bars are too high. The dispensers are too high. There's not enough clear width on the side or in front of the toilet for a transfer. So we have that in there. We have a couple of representative photos, what it should look like and to describe it. So again, if you're paying for an accessible toilet, you should be getting a compliant toilet. Just an aside for a second, we were in Charlton and they had an accessible toilet, but then they had a chain on the top of the door. So I guess for the wind, so it wouldn't open up. Well, doing that only left an opening about 22 inches to get into the toilet. I mean, a wheelchair, there's no way, you couldn't get
Like
it.
they expected somebody to reach to the.
Well,
chain.
then way up here, so that's not possible either. So we have a section which typically applies would be your police, fire, public works, and your schools with science classrooms, emergency eye wash stations. We have some examples. A lot of them we see aren't compliant, but we have examples of what would work. And then we have another chapter we've had on accessible routes of travel and playground surface materials. So we have a number of different compliant accessible travel materials. Your typical concrete, asphalt, stone dust. Then we include things as an emulsified stone dust. And there's a new product out there. It's a wood fiber with emulsification over it. And we have on there pros and cons of each, and then a cost per square foot. So if you're putting in a route of travel to like a ball field or some other area, you can look at that and say, okay, well, yeah, this would work for us, or this is better and not as costly. So you have that in there as well. The self-eval, I'm going to turn over in a second to Mike. We look at 11 different areas. There's technically only 5 required. And we look at what you have, and then we make commentary and what recommendations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike on the self-eval piece and let him go over our findings on that. After that, I'll just come back quickly and go over what we found on your different facilities.
All right, thanks, Jim. And like I say, I'll do my best to, gloss over this self-evaluation stuff because, we value your time as well. So first on the list, Commission on Disability. Currently, the, Mendon does not have a Commission on Disability. So it's definitely recommended that through annual town meeting, the select board adopt, Mass General Law 40, Chapter 40, Section 8J, to establish a Commission on Disability and appoint a minimum of 5 members to this commission. And one of their first order of business can be making sure stuff is carried out as per documented in the ADA plan. Number 2, ADA coordinator. Town planner Dylan Lindholm serves as the town of Mendon's ADA coordinator, and Mass Office on Disability already knows that. And so the only recommendation there is to actually post the name and contact information of the ADA coordinator in the town hall, and create a ADA coordinator webpage that can include all, different ADA documents such as public notice of non-discrimination, reasonable accommodation policy, reasonable accommodation request form, non-disclosure notice and ADA grievance procedure, non-discrimination notice. There's nothing on the town's website now, so it's recommended that Mendon adopt this notice of non-discrimination, which I believe is going to be spoken about after the three of us are done. Same with the ADA grievance procedure. Mendon already has one, but it hasn't been formally adopted. So that too is going to be spoken about after us. And then next is policies, procedures, practices, adopt a recommendation, adopt a reasonable accommodation policy, as well as a reasonable accommodation request form, which is also going to be discussed after us. So it's awesome that Mendon is being proactive. Next on the next is maintenance of accessibility features. The municipality should need to maintain anything that enhances accessibility. Make sure it's in a good working order. For example, and it is in good working order, that limited use limited access elevator, otherwise called a Lula. That's how I entered the building and got up here.
We apologize.
What's that?
We apologize for how you had to enter it.
Oh, you know what? Not a big deal. It probably helps that Jim and I and Connor were here before,
Right.
For the ADA startup meeting. So I knew that, but that's certainly not my first, Lula rodeo. So effective communication auxiliary aids and services. Local governments must ensure effective communication with individuals with disabilities. Recommendation, adopt auxiliary aid and or accommodation request language in all meeting notices. It's also recommended that the town purchase an assistive listening system, preferably a portable one that can be used for meetings like this that are open to the public. I believe you might already be addressing that. I do recall, Dylan requesting, some assistive listening devices. And I think I may have already seen one in use at this meeting. So that's effective communication. Website accessibility. Title II of the Americans with Disability Acts requires that local governments ensure that when viewed in their entirety, the programs, services, and activities are equally available, to persons with disabilities, and websites are, part of that. And as for Mendon's website itself, I have a very good friend who's visually impaired and uses, the most recent version of JAWS screen reading software. And she said that the, Mendon's website is very friendly. And that's probably because, Mendon uses Civics Plus as your web host.
Yeah, we very recently went through a whole upgrade of the website, and ADA compliance was one of the main reasons we went about doing that, because we're very happy you didn't get to see our previous website.
Nice, good. Yep, good stuff. And emergency preparedness. The Minden Office of Emergency Management oversees the safety and well-being of Minden residents during the time of local emergencies or national crisis, and coordinates and executes strategic plans as outlined by state and federal government. And it's just recommended that Minden incorporate the guidance in chapter 7 of this very ADA plan that we're speaking to. And that, just one other recommendation, remove the term able-bodied from future Office of Emergency Management reports and documents, as there's no reason why a person with a disability can't shelter in place. And there's a distinct possibility that these people are unable to evacuate due to their disabling condition. But instead of able-bodied, you could use the term non-disabled. It just flows better for people with disabilities like myself.
Did you look at all of our documents for that type of language? We've been on a language hunt this last couple of years.
Well, you know what, just in general, but it was, while I was looking through the emergency management,
so something we should sort of be aware that this type of language exists in our documentation and make an effort to adjust it.
And the same goes with in the job description. Again, it's in the report in much more detail, but in job description. So some things is so a person might apply maybe a clerical job, and it would be, and the person is in a wheelchair. And one of the job requirements is be able to walk to retrieve documents or walk to the file cabinet. Well, obviously I'm in a wheelchair, I can't walk, but I can traverse. I can move. So it is other. So we have examples of different language, which is better stationary versus stand. And again, there's two reasons. One, it's more inclusive job description, but also it is protection from a discrimination suit where someone says, well, you said I had to walk and I didn't get this job and I'm in a wheelchair, so you discriminated against me because I can't, I can't walk.
Not telling people how to do things.
Right.
But just what the outcome of the action should be.
Exactly. And the essential functions responsibility. Yes. So we have examples of report in detail. So that's something to your human resources person. We didn't get all, we got a handful of job descriptions, not all. So
I think about 95% of them.
What's that?
I think you got 95.
About 95%?
95% of them.
Yeah.
You gave a lot. I didn't look at it. He looked at it. Like,
hey, Jason, have you been reading ahead the ADA plan? Because you just quoted verbatim what Jim says in.
I did. I know I'm on the able-bodied page of the document right now, but that's it. No, I'm just following along with you guys.
Yeah, but if you look through the self-evaluation piece, Jim, you quoted Jim verbatim about it's about the outcome.
Oh. Outcome is an IT word that we use a lot to hide all the work you have to do.
Yep. So
all right.
That's it for the self-evaluation. So I'm going to turn this back over to Jim.
Okay, so I'll finish just the format, which again you have. I don't know if you have it on your computers, but the format we like to set up. Each individual facility has its own assessment. The only exception would be Memorial Park, because in multiple fields, and it just made more sense. I think we separated veterans from that, but the other ones they're all embedded within that one as treating each field. But anyway, everyone has their own separate report. We like to do a really brief narrative description at the beginning, so have a general feel of what the facility is, when it was built, what purpose it serves, a representative photo, who the responsible party is, and then a narrative description. And in this case, for the town hall building, which I'm showing here, is about 4 pages. So a narrative description of what the areas of noncompliance are. And we do that, it takes more work on our part, but we do that because you as a select board or other boards can just quickly read through and get a general feel of what the issues are, as opposed to having to, dig deep into the nuts and bolts and nitty gritty, which follows, which I'm going to talk about right now. So after we do the narrative part, we go ahead and we have in a table format in much more detail what the issues are. So we have a general description of what the obstacle is. We have the federal citation under ADAG. We have 521 CMR, the citation, and then specifically as you have it up there. So it's specifically what type of action needs to be taken, and then we have a priority rating, a feasibility rating, and a time frame. And this is detailed in the report, what those are, and then a rough cost estimate. So in a lot of these, and I won't take the time to actually read a specific one, a lot of these, and we've had in just recently in the past year, 3 or 4 facilities folks, they were going to make some changes in some areas in bathrooms, and they were able to just lift exactly what we had specified and then give that to contractors to get a price quote on, because it had very exactly do with the location of the toilet, the grab bars, if there's a sink and all that. So it ends up being very very useful for folks. And then we have representative photographs as well to back up the not all but most of the things that we've identified. So a couple things before I go into the overview of what's findings. So there are tolerances under both 80 and 521 CMR. So for 0 to 2 inches, it's an 1/8-inch tolerance. For 2 to 36 inches, it's 1/2 inch. For more than 36, it's 1 inch. So what's that mean? So a sink in a bathroom can be no more than 34 inches above finished floor to the top of the sink. So if it's 34.5 inches, technically it's within tolerance, it's okay. If it's 35 inches, technically it's 1 inch too high. Tolerance do not apply to a range of dimensions or slopes. A range of dimensions. So a grab bar in a bathroom must be 33 inches for adults, 33 to 36 inches above finished floor to the top of the gripping surface. That's your tolerance, 33 to 36. So again, keep saying technically if it's 36.25 inches, it's too high. We have to write it common sense. If you're not going to lower, no one's going to file a complaint or a lawsuit because it's a 1/4 inch too high. But we note it. But if it's 38 inches, yes, that's too high. That definitely needs to be lowered. Same thing with slopes. Ramp slopes, for example, they cannot exceed 8.3%. If it's 8.4%, 8.5%, we typically write in there, if required, seek a variance to retain the existing slope because the cost to make the correction versus the benefit gained, there's too much cost versus the benefit. It's unreasonable. However, if that slope is 9.2, 10%, now you're talking a substantial, differential, and that's much more difficult for a wheelchair user to do. So the ADA governs employee workspaces, 521 CMR is not. The last thing before I go into the overviews, schools. So schools, and we did obviously 2, the elementary school and the middle school. There are different standards for both ADA and 521 CMR. One is by age, one is by grade. For simplicity, we use grade as what we refer to in the report. But there are also different standards and this primarily applies to reach range in non-bathroom areas and in bathroom areas to the heights of the toilets, to the setbacks, to the near wall, and to the grab bar heights. Other items are pretty much uniform. So there are different standards for pre-K, and then K to 3, then 4 to 6, and 7 to 12. So we look at that when we do we look at the schools. All right, so I'm going to go through going to try to go relatively quickly. I'm going to go through general buildings, general adult bathroom issues, the 2 schools, and then the rec area and sidewalks. But again, this try to keep it in about 10, 15 minutes. So general buildings, these are just general findings across the board. We found pretty consistently, maybe some buildings didn't have all, but parking, in some cases, there is no designated accessible parking, or in some cases, the signage was too low. Must be at least 60 inches to the bottom of the sign, or too high, no more than 96 inches to the top. Or the running slopes were more than 2% or less exceeded level. So in some cases, the running slopes were more than that. Some cases, the spaces weren't van accessible, or there was no access aisle. Some of the extra routes of travel into the buildings had excessive abrupt changes level surface, more than 1/4 inch unbeveled, or more than 1/2 inch beveled. Doors, excessive operating forces, at maximum is 15 pounds for an exterior door, 5 pounds for an interior door, and must take at least 6 seconds to close. A lot of doors, I mean, it's typical, we see this all the time, the doors just open and, bang, slam shut. Stair railings, we found in many cases they were not round or oval in shape. They lacked top and bottom extensions, and they were too wide. They can be no more than 2 inches in outside diameter. Extensions on railings, they must be the slope distance of 1 tread, and then 12 inches parallel to the ground. So commonly we see that didn't exist. Also, in some cases, we saw the stair risers are not uniform, and in some cases, uniform in height, consistently going up. And in some cases, they exceeded the maximum height of 7 inches under ADA. And in some cases, the noses were not curved or beveled. If you don't have that, sometimes you have let's say you have a drop foot, and you're going to get your foot potentially caught under the nosing, which is not beveled. You're not going to slide up with your foot. Ramps, some of the ramps exceeded the 8.3% maximum running slope. And in some cases, the railings were not at the 18 to 20 inches lower railing height and 34 to 38 upper railing height. We found in many cases, some of the facilities had non-compliant knob style hardware. You have lever style here, and that's great, because with lever style, you operate with a closed fist or loose grip. Knob, you can't. You need to pinch or twist, and if I have issues with my hand, I can't open that door. Many cases, in this building was included, there was lack of tactile designation signage, or is at improper height, 60 inches on center under 521 CMR, or wasn't located on the latch side of the door. In some cases, the adult reach range in buildings for items such as light switches, fire pools, dispensers, drop boxes, defibrillators, do not disturb signs on doors, which I think there's some in this building. All were higher than 48 inches. So if I'm in a wheelchair, I can't reach those to use them. Some buildings in here, off the top of my head, I'm a blank, but I know in some of the schools, under the ADA, doors with glass panes, the glass panes cannot exceed more than 43 inches in height to the bottom of the glass pane. So again, presumably if I'm in a wheelchair, I can view it just as, you or I were standing. Some of the facilities had tables or desks for like meeting spaces. These are fine, which didn't have the 27 inches of knee height under the table or 19-inch knee depth. So a wheelchair user couldn't get in there to use that. Doorway thresholds, some of them exceeded the abrupt change in level surface to 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. Some of the doorways we found were less than the required 32-inch clear width to get into that doorway. In some cases, library had some of this, especially, well, I shouldn't say especially, because of the stacks. The 36-inch route of travel, sometimes the stacks are a little too tight, or maybe this item is placed around, but that was in other areas as well, stacks, tables, chairs, sometimes, and easy to just move some things here or there to get the accessible route travel requirement. And obviously, this, this is more specific, the lack of building access and internal vertical access. The senior center, the food pantry, can't get the senior center, the food pantry, and they service that. And then that second level up there where there's activities and things, you can't get. The only thing that is there is a highly non-compliant stair chairlift, which is okay for a residential home, but that's not acceptable for a public facility, because obviously a wheelchair can't get themselves into a little stairlift thing. And also, the records room, historical, and cobbler shop, not accessible. Those aren't open to public, they're closed right now, but if they were open, that would need to be addressed. Now you're used just for storage or they're not open per se, but those are not accessible at all. Adult bathrooms in general, code hooks were too high for adults, dispensers 48 inches, dispensers were too high. This is a little bit anomaly for some reason under 521 CMR. The reach range for dispensers and bathrooms is 42 inches, the operating mechanism, but everywhere else is 48 inches. Don't know, but anyway, in bathrooms, the dispensers were typically too high. Also, most of your towel dispensers, the operating mechanism was a knob style on the side, which required use of the fingers and twisting the wrist. Again, something with like a lever style or push that you can operate. Mirrors were often too high. They can be no more than 40 inches bottom of the reflecting surface, not the frame of the mirror. In many cases, the sink piping was not wrapped, guarded, or insulated. Some cases, the grab bars are too high or too low. I mentioned 36 inches. Some water closets in entirety lacked grab bars, or they had grab bars that were only 36 inches long. They must be 42 inches long. In some cases, the water closet flush control was on the wrong side. They must be on the far side, the approach side. So if I'm again a user in a wheelchair, I can easily access, not reach over to use it. And in some cases, the toilet paper dispensers were too far or too close to the toilet. They need to be 7 to 9 inches on center in front of the toilet, right within reach range. And in many cases, there weren't adequate clearances on the water closet. So it must be 18 inches on center to the near side, and then 42 inches on the far side and 42 inches in front, and that's for maneuverability purposes. I'm going to jump to the Clough Elementary School, Clough Elementary School. That's pre-K to grade 4. Hallway locker coat hooks and shelves are too high. They're all 49, 50 inches. For that grade level, it should be 40 inches in height. And 5% of the lockers should be made accessible. Easy fix. Those shelves are easily just movable down and hooks. It's not a big deal. We found there are a number of protruding objects throughout the building. Protruding objects is anything that's more than 4 inches from a wall into the accessible route of travel at a height of 27 inches to 80 inches. So if I'm sight impaired, I'm not going to visually see it, or I'm not going to be able to pick it up with my cane detection. There were some gym fire stroke cages. There was a dispenser or stop the bleed kit. There were some drinking fountains, and they all were accessible. They all were protruding objects. The ramp to the cafeteria stage, again, simple fix, but it was blocked. You couldn't use it because it was used as storage. We see that all the time. We see drums and the music stands stored in them, but this time it was portable shelving. And also, none of the dining room tables had the compliant knee height and knee depth for a wheelchair user. Office staff sinks lacked a proper knee height and depth. In the classroom themselves, you might not think it's a big deal, but it could be if someone were to fall and get hurt. Or the classrooms throughout had loose rugs, frayed rugs. They were not properly secured to the floor and could easily serve as a tripping hazard. That is under the ADA and 521, but it's also something that someone falls and trips, and that, it's could be an issue. Classroom towel dispensers were typically too high for the appropriate grade level. Pre-K is 36, K to 3 is 40, 4 to 6 is 44. And again, the classroom towel dispensers also were the pinching and twisting of the wrist. The sinks, again, either had missing elements, exposed piping, or no knee clearance, and typically found items stored under the sinks, eliminating wheelchair access. Something we see all the time, and unfortunately we've seen this in 3 or 4 brand new constructed elementary schools. The sink bubblers are too far from the front edge. They can be no more than 5 inches from the front edge, or in such also that the water flow is at least 3 inches in the front. So if I'm in a wheelchair, I can easily access that. In this case here, they're all 7 to 8 inches back from the sink. There were 2, however, in talking with the facilities person there, because of your water quality issues, all of those have been terminated except for 2. 2 were in service. So some organizations just terminate the service in those 2, and then you're good. Just don't turn them back on again. And the student bathrooms had numerous areas of non-compliance. Again, the sink piping not being wrapped, the dispensers too high, the operating mechanisms of the towel dispensers, Codex toilet paper dispensers that were too close, water closet setbacks. We, in some cases, they had dispensers located over the grab bars. And in the cases that there were stall doors, probably the hallway bathrooms, the stall doors opened in, not out. They must open out. They didn't self-close. In some cases, left pull devices and had codex too high. So if you have a stall door that doesn't self-close and doesn't have a pull device, the only way I can go if I'm in a wheelchair to close that door is try to reach down like this and then close the door because it's not self-closing. And then I got to try to reach over and try to get the lock to, so easy, self-close and solid pull device. Miskel Hill Middle School, similar situation with the locker, codex and shelving. Similar situation with the classroom dispensers, towel dispensers, sinks. Similar situation with the sink bubblers. One of the key issues in that school, there are many ramps. 5 of the interior ramps are problematic. They had running slopes up to 10.3%, 8.3% of maximum. That's the maximum that's allowed. Some of the railings were too high or too low. 2 ramps were actually 3.5 feet too long. The maximum run of a ramp is 30 feet. After that, you need a level space and then continue on. And then 1 ramp had railings on one side only. Some of the tables in the specialty rooms, which were fixed tables, so science and media, again, didn't have the knee height and knee depth. Auditorium, a couple of different issues there. Again, there was no assisted listening system for a facility that size that's required because of the number of seats. You did have the designated removable arm seats, so those were the number it was required, so that was great. The stairs to the stage had open risers. That's not allowed under ADA or 520 of the CMR because that's a tripping hazard with the open riser. And the railings were non-compliant. They were too wide. They lacked top and bottom extensions. And then again, there was no accessible route of travel from the assembly area to the stage itself, and that's a requirement as well. Bathrooms, pretty much similar issues as I mentioned for adults and for the elementary school. The only thing I think that was different here, and let me just look, is a lot of the bathrooms in that building had self-closing faucets or metered faucets, and they must stay open for at least 10 seconds. So in many cases, we'd go ahead and, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, we stop.
Those are like 1 second faucets.
What's that?
Those are easily 1 second faucets we've all used.
Yeah. And those are all adjustable. Again, I'll get about maybe 10 more bullets. Recreation areas. This included the schools, recreation areas, and playgrounds. Again, typically we found a lack of accessible parking. There was lack of accessible routes of travel fully to, around, and within the facilities. Benches and bleacher seating lacked level area for wheelchairs. Picnic tables typically didn't have the required 19-inch knee depth. Concession stands where they existed, the counters were too high, 34 inches, the maximum height on counters for a food service counter. Playgrounds, there were no accessible play equipment, and the surfaces were predominantly wood chips, which is a non-compliant accessible route of travel. Wood chips may be acceptable as a fall zone material if it meets the ASTM standards, but wood chips are not a means of accessible route because in a wheelchair or arm braces, or it's just too much drag. It's just not firm, stable surface. A couple areas had chain link gates. I think the playground areas under ADA chain link gates must have a smooth surface on the push side of the gate at a height of from ground to 10 inches up. Presumably, if I'm a wheelchair user and I'm pushing to get open, I don't get caught on it if it's not a smooth surface. Portable toilets were typically not accessible, and they were not an accessible route. And then, specific to the town beach, there was no, accessible route to the water's edge, either a matting service, which we typically see on a lot of the beaches that we've gone to. They have the matting, the rollout matting that they put down to get there, or something else. Last area, about 5 bullets. sidewalks and curb ramps. We focus on Hartford Avenue, North Ave, segments of Main Street and Maple Street. So a number of the curb ramps lack detectable warning strips. A number of the curb ramps had changes in level surfaces up to 3 inches due to granite curbing. Essentially, there's no curb ramp. So there's no way to actually, once you come to the intersection, you couldn't actually get off and proceed across and move. Some curb ramps, which if they did exist, had excessive slopes and lacked a top level landing. This you probably know, if a lot of them are very, very poor condition, severe deterioration, gaps in surface, and abrupt change in level surface. Some cases, they reduced clear width of less than 36 inches, either due to a telephone pole, a mailbox. Some cases, they had granite curbing at either the intersection of a street or at a driveway, and it kind of wrapped around like this, and which left you maybe 20 inches or 18 inches of actually a clear way, because that granite kind of wrapped around. You had an abrupt change there. There also in some areas there was some vegetative overgrowth. There was a couple of, I'm not going to mention the businesses where they had stone placed in front, and now the stone is all now kind of migrated into the sidewalk, causing a problem. And in a lot of cases, and this is more, I think, could be a policy or regulation adopted by the board, the placement of trash receptacles right in the middle of the sidewalk on trash day, or leaving there until whenever, which causes the person now, could be a mother pushing a baby carriage, could be someone in a walker, someone in a wheelchair. I can't get by because of that. Now I have to try to either get out in the street. Now I'm in the street, and that's a safety hazard.
I feel like we have Board of Health guidelines on that. I don't know if those are rules.
Yeah,
But-
there are guidelines on rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that stuff that you put in planning? Does that go to like ZBA, or does that go to general bylaw, or that just is policy?
I
'Cause
think
if we're gonna
Board of-
fine,
Yeah. Board of Health or general bylaw.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen in some cases, you didn't have it here, a couple of times in the downtown businesses, you get the placards, today's lunch special is, and it's right plop in the middle of the sidewalk. So I get 12 inches here and I get 12 inches here. And I guess same said, somehow put it in so it's it's.
you have one of those giant placards right there at the back of the room.
Yep, you do.
So there's a very, very long list, and it really, I think, highlights the need for a commission.
I got 3 more bullets.
Oh, okay, all right. 3 more bullets, yes.
Bullets, I'm done. So some of the mailboxes were placed, again, how they're placed in the sidewalk served as a protruding object. Has actually protruded into the accessible route at the height where they were. So again, especially if I'm a person who's sight impaired using a cane, I'm not going to pick up my cane detection. And there was one guy wire over, okay, my directions, I think it was over here if I'm pointing right, which actually was also reduced the headroom in the sidewalk. It didn't report the location. It's by across from the town, opposite of the town hall annex. Sidewalk heaving, substantial in areas, mostly due to street root disturbance. Also, it results in abrupt change in level surface. And then some areas, particularly where there's driveways, cross slopes cannot exceed 2%, and some are pretty excessive. So again, a wheelchair user, again, it's excessive. That causes a problem when I'm traversing down the sidewalk. So that's pretty much done. We asked the folks, obviously, you're gonna have questions. We leave this open for a few weeks. If you get any more comments, do you have any more questions or changes? Dylan and Dan Byer already found some things that we had misnamed some of the fields and some of who the responsible parties were for facilities. So if anything, if anyone finds that you can filter it to Dylan, she can get it to us. Once we have that, we will then finalize the report and then print it out, because we're going to print it out and have to reprint it out because it's 277-page document. So, but we'll leave it a few weeks, and then we'll be in touch with Dylan, and then we'll finalize the plans.
Well, thank you for that. That was, very, very thorough, and it's really good to highlight that these issues should be addressed. So I appreciate as I was starting to say, I appreciate the recommendation to have a commission, because certainly that commission would have its work cut out for them to consider all of these recommendations. But I did have a quick question about the schools, because we as a town are not the town does not is not responsible for those facilities, and I don't know to what extent there's been coordination with the regional school committee about the findings from the school. I mean, presumably, I know it sounds like you were there in the school, so I guess I want to make sure that they have full access to these recommendations for those school facilities as well.
They were aware because we coordinated with them to get access. Also, we did the school administration building, met with Jay Buyer there, so they're aware of what was going on. Yeah, who's responsible? I guess you guys would be pointing fingers. I don't know, but I mean, I know.
My fingers, we
Right.
collaborate.
Well, I think it's more so there is funding to do some work on the buildings, and so presumably they are aware of like ADA compliance as they're doing the bathrooms, for example. But I want to make sure that I think it's a really good time to make sure that they have full access, because I would hate the idea that something was missed.
So Elena, Dylan says that they have an ADA coordinator.
Great. Okay.
Right. And I want to mention that this is linked from our ADA coordinator website. This draft plan is linked from there. And I just want to throw some statistics out. It looks like 51% of the plan is the senior center in Misco.
Okay.
So I think that's a stark reality there. And it looks like the range is $2 to $3 million without sidewalks. So I think there's a lot of direction we need to go and create, essentially.
And the schools isn't actually because they were replacing their ramp. And that was one thing we addressed through admin. They've already done it, but they're planning. So they reach out to Dylan reach out to us. We had that section done and we forwarded. We had exactly what the ramp needed to be, the spec, like I said before, take it, lift it. That's what we need to, so you gave them that. So yeah, they are aware that this stuff is being done.
Great.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And I know it does really, it does matter to the town that this work is done and these points are considered, especially since, we have our town meetings at Misco. And so we want to have our meetings be fully accessible to the whole community. So I appreciate that. All right. Were there any other points to make on this? I don't know. Was that your complete presentation?
That is it. Yes.
Dylan wants
Thank
to come up and if they're part of the.
Yeah, Dylan, did you have anything to add?
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Have a nice ride.
Thank you. And if you have any questions after Dylan, you contact us tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. And believe me, we still get contacted by plans that we did 5-6 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, we appreciate that.
We're very approachable.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dylan Lynch. I'm the town planner and the ADA coordinator. I just want to thank everyone behind me for this self-evaluation transition plan. CMRPC Connor has been great about helping us get those funds to get this done. And I personally appreciate everybody having an interest in getting these things.
It's, I think, one of the most detailed plans of any type I have seen here. So I do really appreciate that. It's a lot of data to go through.
On the comment about the Commission on Disability, in the meantime, I'm happy to help coordinate any sort of transition or changes with facilities and with any of our larger town projects that happen to.
Is a commission, is that something that's already determined how it should run and like what its mission is, or is that something that we determine?
Yeah, it's pretty standard across the state. I think there's some rules around it, so we can work on that.
I think somebody mentioned a state law specifically about that that I guess this would be a commission potentially that town meeting would accept?
Yeah, I think you have to adopt a regulation.
First, we do the
Yeah,
MGL.
yeah.
then forget the commission.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's like-
And just as an aside, before I get into I have a little PowerPoint for you guys. I have been talking to a few town departments about larger town projects, like I said, and some of this ADA stuff is going to become important with any sort of construction or reconstruction we do. My plan is to coordinate a meeting with Jen, Jeremy, and a few town departments about any of these larger town projects that come in, just to make sure that they go through all the right channels and we don't miss anything. Every department who needs to be involved is aware from the start. So I just have an addition to what we just talked about.
I just want to interrupt before we
Yeah.
get started, so it's not in the middle. Are you planning on bringing any of this to special town meeting? Because we're going to open that warrant, so.
I haven't looked close enough to decide on anything
Okay.
being
Well,
that
commission,
important.
like,
Yeah.
if you don't want to wait 6 months.
Yeah, we can certainly,
You can always put a placeholder in and then
Yeah.
decide.
I don't remember how to start a PowerPoint anymore.
The little computer icon in the bottom right-hand corner
Oh,
next to the
no,
slider.
I found it.
That's the quickest way.
It's not going anywhere. There it goes. Okay. So they briefly touched upon the website in that presentation, and I wanted to go into a bit more detail because there was a recent change to ADA through the Department of Justice that created some new regulations we need to pay attention to. This computer's a little funny today. Okay, so quick agenda. I'm just going to go over what WCAG means. What we're talking about is web accessibility, online accessibility, how we're doing so far, what my plan is for the future, and just a few ideas of how we can get started. So WCAG is a new guideline that we need to follow, the new regulations for the ADA, and we have until April 2028. It was recently extended, luckily. Some of the items I mentioned, I might say, staff is a direction to town staff. I also mean anyone who posts content on behalf of the town. Just to say staff, but I do mean anyone on the boards, anything like that. So I'll explain this. Web content accessibility guidelines is WCAG. We have been following WCAG 2.0 in most of our website content, but now we're at 2.1 AA. So we need to make a few updates. There's some regulations we're going to need to follow, and it pertains to every web communication that the town does. So that's our website, that's any other smaller websites we might have, a Facebook post about an event, all of it, which is pretty extensive, but
How much of that,
we're
like,
not in a bad place.
is stuff that people have to do versus the technology can do?
Yeah.
The website itself is okay. And I'll mention here somewhere that Civic Plus is compliant with 2.0, not 2.1 yet, but every single one of their clients needs to do this.
Right.
It's from the federal government, so they're working on it. I'm sure I will also be in communication with them. But there are things like a lot of the attachments that we put on our web pages.
The 13
Scans of
clicks you need to get the
PDFs,
thing.
images with words on it that don't
Aren't
have
searchable.
text that you can, exactly. Yep. So this is just, sometimes it's hard to think about this stuff if you have never experienced it. Web accessibility helps everybody, not just people with disabilities. Reading your phone screen in bright sunlight creates a visual issue, right? So you can experience something, you have trouble getting that information off the web because you have a visual issue with that. If your internet is spotty and you're trying to see an image, if there was text accompanying that image, you'd be able to find out information from the event. maybe you have to increase the text size on your computer because you lost your glasses or your eyes got dilated at the doctor's, So there's ways to help us understand what other people go through and try to understand the struggles that other people have experienced, things we take for granted. So how are we doing? Like I said, Civic Plus. It's great that we updated the website. Most of the things we have on there are just already accessible. There's already features built into it that help us out. Third-party software that everybody uses, a lot of people use OpenGov, a lot of people use ArcGIS. These programs, I'm sure, are going to make sure that what they have
Are you
is
focusing on
accessible.
staff software or like all software or
Anything that we put out, it's everything. So,
whatever it is, if inside or outside people use it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're going to be, putting it out on behalf of the town, we have to make sure that there's some,
Right.
Yeah.
Trouble is gonna be the all volunteer boards.
Yep. Yeah. So, I'll mention that too. Yeah. So all web communications, Facebook posts, like I said. Just to mention that 2.0 AA that Civic Plus has been compliant with already. We just have a few more requirements for them to add onto the website, like app controls, more low vision support, and more cognitive accessibility, which I'm not sure exactly the specific regulations for that, but that's sort of the summary of what the changes have been since Civic Plus updated their ADA.
That's like adjusting language so that it's not biased or
I'm
like too explanatory.
I'm thinking,
Like, what
yeah, I mean, bringing reading levels down and things like that is really helpful. I don't know exactly the regulations for that, but yeah, I try to personally just try to bring the reading level down sometimes to make sure that everybody can understand what we're talking about in government. Even people who have just never interacted with government don't know if these terms are used.
Sound like agenda items,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
Interesting.
So just a plan of attack here. So we have a little under 2 years, and I am going to be working with all the departments as well as any of these boards, commissions, committees, whatever we have. Anyone that puts out something on the web on behalf of the town of Mendon could be responsible for this. We want to make sure that we are compliant as a town. So my first step is putting out a small guide. There's already a lot of guidance online, but I'm going to put some information together, some helpful links, some helpful how-tos, and just distribute that so people have a starting place and an understanding of what needs to be done. My next item, of course, is the adoption of those forms that we were talking about. So I have those, and that's going to be sort of a middle ground where we have a way to request more accessible formats and things like that.
Like an ADA compliant AI agent that could review all of that content.
No idea. After I get a guide out, we need to create sort of an inventory of our web content. Obviously, the sitemap on the website is a great place to start, but take a look at what sort of attachments each of the web page has. Are there things that are scans of old photocopies that, the text recognition on that is really tough? We can use our phones and use Google Translate and it'll like find text, but it's not always perfect. And it's not compliant with what we need to do as a government agency. We can't just put it out there as like a picture of an old set of minutes or whatever. So I'm going to make an inventory. This is just a note to people who work on the website. They have their own web page for their department or whatever. Just let me know if there's some big change coming. That'd be great to know. And then, so that'll be spring next year. I'll have all that ready to go. And then I'm going to make appointments with departments, boards, et cetera, any individuals or small groups, and just talk about what issues might need to be rectified before the deadline, and start talking about how to move forward and any new communications, how do we do those properly. And
I'd like to see like a web version of our agendas, for example.
Yeah.
That would be
Mhm.
wonderful.
Yeah, a small thing is like, we need to have, when you have a table of contents and you have title, headings, header 1, header 2, those all need to be in all of our Word documents.
So
They all have to have, exactly.
Understand them.
So this is more of a note to town departments, or like I said, anyone who produces web content for us. There'll be some groups that are going to be higher priority, like having scans of photocopies from 1970 on their website. People are using the third-party softwares that we need to make sure fit our regulations that we need to follow. And anyone who really has personalized their web page on Civic Plus, changed the font colors or put a bunch of images, things like that, so we can sort of train a new way of thinking about those sorts of changes.
Departments not using.
Right, they have a different system, yeah. So we want to make sure, the contrast of their text in the background is correct. Civic Plus does that for us automatically, but we can change it. We can override that. So we want to make sure when we override it, we're not making decisions that
Yellow on
hinder.
black.
Right, yeah. And then we should be fully in compliance by April 2028, or else we'll be in violation of ADA Title II. So April 2028, I'm very thankful for the extension. There are other communities who are over 50,000 residents. They are due in April 2027. So you'll start seeing some of the bigger communities be compliant, and that's great for us because we can follow their example. Exactly, yeah. So I'm gonna have a permanent guide after, talking to all the different departments, seeing what our sticking points are, how-to guides, tips, online resources, and have that available to everybody, posted on the website. So it's there, transparent, everyone's able to access it. And obviously I am around or any sort of guidance or support people need before and after this transition.
Does that mean like we're developing like a full Mendon style guide, or it's?
I've been talking about that for about 2 years, and I think we've talked, Kat and I have talked a little bit about it. I think it might be time. It might be time. This might be it. Yeah. So it's been something sort of on the back burner for a while, just because it
Like,
hasn't been something that's a priority, but
header images, like
Right.
colors, like these things are not uniform across the system, and so doesn't really bring a lot of unity to when things get printed out. Or
and it can help efficiency of staff too, if we have some templates to use for things too. Yep.
I know Jeremy and my predecessor Katie had started
Yeah.
that before, so it was in the works, and I definitely see it
That
continuing.
was
Actually,
my fault. I
getting
started
it better.
complaining about it.
And so
everything old is new again.
Yeah. And just a few tips, if anyone's, raring to get going. Like I said, images that contain information, you also need to have that text underneath. So as an example, if you go on Instagram and you see an event advertised and you see that image, and it says all the text of, where the event is, what time it's at. Underneath that, you have the text post as part of Instagram. Type it all out too. Right? They have to actually see the text, not just the image. And then you might have seen something called like an alt text. It goes with images on Word or on websites, and filling out that to explain what image you are posting.
Or do you do both?
Both, yeah. And obviously alt text, not everyone knows where that is or how to do it. I'm going to be explaining that to people in that step 1 preliminary plan. It's an easy win for us to get some of these going. Like I mentioned, color contrast, be careful about the contrast. There's very specific guidelines on the contrast between the colors of like font and background, things like that. So
White on baby blue, that's super easy.
And then this is sort of like a stopgap. It is not a valid workaround for compliance after 2028, but it's also a recommendation that our consultants were talking about, where we use a little more language in more things that we do, maybe on agendas, on larger plans or documents we develop, and say, hey, if this document isn't accessible to you, let us know. We're going to get you something that is. You let us know what format you need, and we'll find a way to get it to you. Maybe they need a larger font. Maybe they need it in a PDF instead of a Word document.
And
Whatever
would you
it
go
is.
to form for that, or you want to be? We would be contacting people directly.
Either one.
Your email.
Yeah, yeah. You can have the town, the department that put that thing out. You know, maybe they just already have things ready, or it can go through me. Just any channel is available. And I also try to say to people that whatever method of communication is accessible to them too.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, you know, maybe they can't use email, or maybe
Right.
use telephone.
But yeah. So if someone can talk on the phone, but they can't type call on the phone versus, you know, filling out that form. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that form also has similar language saying, hey, if this form isn't accessible to you, we'll talk it out, you know, on the phone, or you can meet in person. There's different ways.
So meet them where they are.
Yep. That's all I have for this. And then obviously that other item is for those forms, but that's web accessibility, and you'll hear more from me over the next year and a half.
Sounds great.
Great. Thank you, Dylan. And I just want a little side note. The audio is good. Whatever's going on with the microphones is working tonight. I've been able to hear really well. So I think that is something that we've struggled with in the past.
I retuned them a couple months ago when we did this configuration. Maybe that helped. I don't know.
I know.
I'm glad it's working.
Yes. Well, I know that some remote meetings I was at a year ago, I had trouble hearing every word. I had to really strain,
right.
but so the audio is really good. So I appreciate that. And so thank you. Yeah. And just, I also appreciate the idea that this is the time to get some templates for town materials, because I think you're right. Not everybody is aware of how their color or font choices may be readable. So I think this is a good opportunity in the interest of accessibility, as well as getting some uniformity.
Yes, on the side.
On the Commission on Disability, so it is a board, or a commission, I should say, that is appointed by the Select Board after you accept MGL Chapter 40, Section 8. But the majority of all the members have to be people with disabilities.
Okay.
So that's important to know.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
One member must be an elected or appointed municipal official, and then one member must be an immediate family member to a person with disability. So we may have to expand the board from 5 to a few more people, and they have to meet at least 10 times a month, 10 times a year. Sorry.
You weren't going to get going for that. A year, yes.
Yeah. So
Okay.
perhaps we can start maybe brainstorming some people.
And on that note, I want to just mention that not all disabilities are visible. So having disabled people on the board, you might not always know.
Right.
That's something that people disclose. Yeah.
So getting some publicity out there to the community that we're potentially seeking members of the board would be really helpful. Should the town choose to go in this direction, because of course the town has to decide first.
I'll talk to Jen about this over the next few months.
Absolutely.
And we'll get
Elena, it would be part of
That'd be great.
outreach to the community.
I know. I think that is excellent, and I'm glad that we are being pushed to move in this direction. I appreciate that. Actually, Jen, just quick question. So do the members all need to be town residents, or can town employees be part of the board? Does it say that?
Doesn't say that, but
Okay.
definitely something we can look into, because in terms of the elected or appointed municipal official, we might be able to get one or two that
Mhm.
could fit that, as well as take care of the part with the disability.
Great. Okay. Thank you. All right, so Dylan, did you have more that you were presenting to us?
Yeah, and just briefly before I do that, the
Okay.
MVP 2.0 project also is going to be helping people who have access issues. So just to combine that in.
Can you, yeah, can you say what MVP is? Can you remind us?
Yeah, that's a vulnerability project. So that's
Yes, thank you.
storms or you know, when the power is down, things like that, people with disabilities as well as other groups who might have disadvantages in situations where there's danger or vulnerability. So that project is kicking off right now. Myself and Isabella Genova, the conservation agent, are spearheading that with a grant from the state.
Great, thank you.
And then I have the grievance procedure, reasonable accommodation policy, and public notice of non-discrimination for the select board to formally adopt. And I've also created the reasonable accommodation request. I'm not sure if you've seen them, but I have one for citizen requests. So people who say, hey, I need sign language at a meeting, or I need cart services at a meeting, they can ask for that. And then the questions are a little different on the employment one. So this counts as people who are employed or people who are applying for a job. And if they need an accommodation to apply, or if they need an accommodation during their duties at the job. Yeah.
So,
So this form need approval by you guys, but I wanted to provide it as well so you can see what I'm doing.
So I guess, Jen, I wonder if you could weigh in, since you have recently been our HR coordinator. Have you had a chance to review all of the employment-based ones as well as the others?
Glanced at them, but I've worked with Dylan on some other reasonable accommodations, and I'm assuming it's very similar to the.
Extremely similar. Technically, any entity, government or private, I don't know, they don't have to have an exact form for this sort of thing. They can just sort of wing it, which I don't think is really acceptable. So in the past, I've advocated for having
Not like
real,
yeah,
yeah. I think it's really important to have this sort of documented properly. And
Council, take a look at it.
not yet.
Okay.
Yep. But this has been developed with help from that evaluation transition plan. They've given us some examples. It's also been through some disability expert websites. There's a very good one, I can't remember the name right now, that gives HR professionals tons of examples and references.
It's using a lot of the best practices too.
Yeah. So hopefully town council's pleased with it, but I will pass it through.
Yeah. It's good to be.
Yeah, it's all very common sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it's fillable PDF so that if you have trouble using a keyboard, you can sort of click
What's
through
funny
with
is
one
that
mouse
it's turned
press.
into a
Yeah.
non-fillable PDF when
Yeah, I know.
when it got
I know.
printed in our.
Yeah.
Will there be hard copies available for people who don't have computer access? And if so, where would those be?
That is listed here.
Right, but for the recording,
Finding it.
like it's,
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
thank you.
I believe we set out the town clerk. We thought
Right.
that would be an acceptable place because you know, the town administrator might be in a meeting or something. We don't want to sort of we have a place to put those forms right now, but the clerk always has a place for forms and is even put them outside of the window as well. So we thought that would be a good place. And then they'd also be in my office as well.
And HR
And
would
then-
probably take for the accommodations for employees
Exactly.
and potential employees.
Right. And could I also suggest that at the senior center, especially with the outreach coordinator, would be I mean, certainly they could help print things, but might be another place that people might think to look.
Yeah, yeah, I'll spread them out. I think it's worth making sure people have copies of this ready to go.
Yeah, and the senior center has, they're starting their computer project, I think in September. So they'll have how to use access computers, and probably train on how to fill out a fillable form. So that'll be a good opportunity for that.
So the board would probably be happy to approve after legal is happy with the document and any future.
And these, those ones don't need to be approved by you.
Okay.
These other ones do, and they are direct from the self-evaluation transition plan. So if you'd like me to send those through council, I certainly can.
Yep, and then we'd like to have all the board members here when we do a big like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And then those can go on the website once that's approved.
If you need to use them, just call them draft.
Yeah, we had an old one on there, but I updated it based on the new recommendations because I don't know when it was updated last, so definitely look at that.
Great. Well, thank you. So, yeah, so we won't vote on this tonight, but maybe we can get this on an upcoming agenda item. So I agree with the suggestion to run these past town council. Jen, if you could look, if you could see to that, Jen, that would be great.
Yeah, you had sent them to us. So we have, so I have them, so I'll send them
I think,
over to Kate.
I think just in general, any sort of public facing form, it's useful to have town council approval. Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Nope.
Okay. All right. All right.
Thank you for hanging out
Thank
with
you
us.
so much, Dylan. That was very helpful. And we'll hopefully have that finished up soon. All right. So then I believe that was all of agenda item 9. So so I believe we're ready to move on to 10. So the special town meeting warrant. So we had discussed at a previous meeting that the special town meeting would be on October 27th at Misco School. And so I believe that Jeremy moved forward with coordinating all of the necessary parties. So making sure that the school was available as well as town clerk and moderator. But we have yet to open that warrant. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And Jen, did you want to add anything to that?
I just wanted to let you know that Jeremy did send an email to let me know that he reached out to all the stakeholders. So the clerk, the assessor, the accountant, the moderator, the school, and also to Dan to make sure that he'd be available for all of the electronics that need to happen that night. So everyone's all set for that. And Kat and I will be waiting to put holds on the warrant for different things. So we're good to go.
Okay, great. So I would be looking for a motion.
To open the warrant for the October 27, 2026 special town meeting and to close the warrant on October 1st, 2026.
Second.
Further discussion? All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Now aye.
Morford, aye.
Cooter, aye.
Brugos, aye. All right, thank you. The motion passes. All right, so then we are on to town administrator's report. So Jen, over to you.
Yes, that's me. It's been quite a busy, eye-opening 3 weeks. So, but it's been great. Everyone's been great. Anytime I've had to reach out to anyone, they've been wonderful. So I just want to put that out there to thank everyone that's helped me out. Chief Kersey, Chief Bangma, John Dudley have been really good when I've had a lot of questions. So I just definitely wanted to put that out there. So last Saturday, the 8th, so before the day before the celebration, I was able to be out on the road cheering on the PMC riders. And it was really fun. The fire department had, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of it, but they had the ladder truck with the flag. Moritz Schmidt had taken some great pictures of that. So it was just wonderful. I would say the majority of the fire department was there to cheer on Chris Nudd, Lieutenant Nudd, who's on our fire department. He was one of the riders. His family was there. So that was a really great experience. Driving into town, I was able to see other people set up kind of just cheering them on. And there was a lot of riders, and the riders definitely appreciated the people being out there. So that was really fun. I was able to follow up with Jack McClellan at the Board of Health to let us know that all 5 sensors for the Purple Air Sensor project are up and running. And
Purple air.
He walked me through it. It's on his website on the Board of Health, so you can look and see the various spots in town. He has them at Town Hall, the beach, Misco, Providence Street, and the zoo. So today when I looked, the air quality was in the yellow range. And then there's a second page that tells you what all the ranges are. So that was exciting. And then at the Maytown meeting, there was a $17,500 appropriation for free cash to fund the codifying of the general bylaws, zoning bylaws, subdivision rules, and some other regulations. The RFP went out, and I checked with the town clerk today, and it was awarded to general code. And as of today, the contract is fully executed. So in the next 30 days, we'll get assigned a project manager, and that project will move forward. And Ellen and Dylan, who's left, oh, Dylan, you are still here. Okay, Dylan's still here. They'll update as the project progresses. So those were really kind of the highlights that I have. But like I said, everything else is moving forward. It will be, Town Hall will still be standing when Jeremy returns on the 31st.
That's great news. Yes. Thank you, Jen.
On the digitization of the bylaws.
I'm going to defer to Dylan on
Yeah,
that.
do you know what the rollout plan for that is? Is there going to be like a soft rollout? We're going to get like introduced to or is it all just?
They haven't told us yet.
Okay, cool. Just interested.
Yeah, we'll update you once we have a project manager, and then give us an initial, yeah.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Dylan. Any other questions?
No, I'm super excited about the air quality data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're looking past like 20 days, like, can you guess where the wildfire smoke was?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you can see, because he got the first sensors up right before those
Yeah.
couple days. where we
Okay.
had the Canadian one.
Yeah, that
So
was
we-
really,
Yeah, you
Remind-
can see a big in the middle.
When did the sensors go up? Like,
Like August
okay.
3rd. Sorry, I'm looking,
all I know is that he told me that all 5 are now up. So I don't
Okay,
know
great.
and when they went up. And
Great. It's great that we have that data.
yeah, that came from a grant that, according to Jack, Brendan helped assist in getting that.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan and Jack. All right. Any other questions for Jen? Thank you for rolling with the punches, Jen. And we're really
And
glad
again,
that you were
I know
able to
I had
step
to-
up.
In my thanking people, I forgot Kat, who has basically held me up the last 3 weeks, making sure that everything gets done and we're getting there.
Great. Thank you. All right. So then we have future agenda items. So we will be again looking at the paddock property status. I imagine we'll invite Ann Mazar to talk about that. So that's property that was purchased with CPA money. Then financial policies. So Jeremy has been working on those for a while. So those, it would be nice if that were when Jeremy is present. And then the ongoing discussion about cemetery space, in particular Cook Cemetery. And then if there were other topics that we know are coming up, and certainly we'll be talking about the special town meeting a lot, as well as some other topics that came up at this meeting. Any other topics that people want to air?
So Elena, I know at the
Yes.
next meeting on August 19th, Kate Connolly will be joining us. There will be an executive session going
Okay.
on to the agenda, but Kate will be there to
Great.
discuss what's involved with that.
And that is our town council.
Yeah, she's our town
well, but-
council.
Yes, I have yet to
She-
meet her, so I look forward
So
to
she
that.
thought it'd be a great opportunity. Instead of dialing in, she'll be here in person.
Excellent.
As well for that meeting.
Great. Okay. So our next meetings are August 19th and September 2nd. And are there any other issues before I look for a motion to adjourn? All right, then I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
Okay. And then roll call vote. All those in favor?
More for that.
Cooter, aye.
Rugos, aye. All right, so the meeting is adjourned at, it's at 8:24. So I'm in a different time zone, so I had to do a quick calculation there. So 8:24, thank you all.
Have a great night, everybody.
Bye. I think the meeting is still being